Welcome, my friend, to Next Level Change Success. I'm Therese, a change strategist and practitioner with over 20 years of experience designing and delivering impactful change programs across various industries. In this podcast, I share real-world practical strategies to help you create and deliver positive change experiences, whether you're a leader, practitioner, or someone looking to bring new ways of working to life. In today's fast-paced world, change is constant. Here we focus on how you can put people at the centre of your change strategy, because people with a sense of purpose are the most important link in driving performance. So if you're ready to create meaningful change and achieve all the success that comes with it, keep listening. Together, let's change the conversation and take it to the next level. Hello. Welcome to another episode of Next Level Change Success. My name is Therese, and I'm the founder of myvirtualchangemanager.com. I'd like to acknowledge that I am recording on Tharawal country and pay my respects to the traditional owners and custodians on the land on which I am recording, and to elders both past, present, and emerging. So today we're talking about change and cognitive overload. What does cognitive overload mean? It means that the receivers of the change, or people talking about the change, those listening to the messages, become overwhelmed, that they really struggle to be able to absorb the message because the way the messages are being framed are too difficult for them to understand, too many concepts. And I'll talk a little bit about that, because certainly I have sat in sessions where it's been very difficult, when being a receiver of a change, to really understand what was happening. And I've talked about other techniques which help alleviate this, such as storytelling, and how that really brings the change to life in real practical terms. Having scenarios which helps the individual understand again exactly what the change looks like through practical examples, and ensuring that the languaging that you're using is relevant to the team member, because people live within a certain construct and language within their team, whether it be terminology of the ways that they work. And sometimes if you generalize those or talk general concepts, they can't really grasp what you're talking about. So let's talk a little bit about the concept of cognitive overload and what contributes to it, and see how you can avoid it for sure. So one of the first things to do, definitely with any change, is make sure that you do a bit of a dress rehearsal of what you're showing. The reason you do a bit of a dress rehearsal with it is so that you can get feedback from people who are not necessarily close to the concepts or close to the change, about when too much information is being shared. And you will know this when you might put a presentation together, but when you actually step through that presentation, it becomes pretty apparent that you're trying to perhaps share too much information within the time frame that you're given. Sometimes you're not given a huge amount of time to share the stories or to talk about the change, and most people only really have attention for around a maximum of 45 minutes is what you'll ever get from someone, and that is if they're entirely focused and involved, and so making sure that it's not a one-way conversation. But definitely no more than 45 minutes, typically 25 minutes to 30 minutes max is what you're going to get from someone sitting in a briefing, sitting online. It's even more difficult nowadays because of the tech landscape and because of mobile phones. You just simply cannot guarantee that people will not start looking at their phone, checking their emails, or doing other things, whether they're in a room or outside of a room. So you really want to make sure that the messaging is engaging, but even more so there's participation, and that there are moments where people may contribute to the discussion, or people want to be interested in the discussion in the first place. So definitely think about, during your presentations and the way you're presenting the information or showing it, ensure that there's not too many words. Not too many words on the screen, not too many words so that the person presenting feels like they're just going to read off that page if they're nervous, which isn't a great outcome. And you want to ensure that, if at all possible, that you are really pushing for visuals. Visuals will help around telling the story. Visuals just help soften it, and talking to a picture would be more effective than talking to a page full of words. So you really want to take the time to do that. It can be difficult to do that because oftentimes people are used to having a lot of words on a page, but definitely worth exploring how you can change words to pictures. The other thing that causes cognitive overload is too many concepts, talking about too many things, talking about too many different things. You want to ensure that if you're needing to get a lot of information across, you don't do it all in the one session. You break it up into bite-sized pieces, or you might use different tools and methods to tell different parts of the story. So you might use a clip to be able to tell the story. Then you might have some words, and then you might have people, different images that are shared throughout a campaign and a period of time. If you try and introduce too many concepts all at once, it becomes confusing. And this can happen if you're trying to have too many analogies or too many metaphors about the change as well. Just keep it really simple. Stick with one and continue to build on it over time. It can take time to unpack that and to land on an analogy or metaphor that really works for your change, but it is worth taking the time to do that and then consistently sticking to it. But don't start introducing many different concepts or different metaphors or similes, whatever you want to do. You want to make sure that it's very simple. Always keep it simple. Then think about if there's frameworks being talked about or different concepts there. Again, streamline, simplify as much as possible so that a simple catchphrase becomes part of essentially your campaign for your change, and that is repeated and built upon if you're finding that's really hitting the mark and resonating. That's very, very important. The other thing to talk about how you can avoid cognitive overload. So we've talked about pictures, we've talked about simplify the message, stories and scenarios to bring it to life. The analogy or metaphor might do that quite nicely, but then when you get into the tangible aspects of it, the practicalities of it, the real world examples, once again, help bring it to life. And that can be very, very powerful for the change that you've got. So if you're sitting in a space where you have a change, and this is really relevant in the world of AI at the moment, is think about how you're going to bring that concept to life for your organization. The other thing to look at is social proof. So where other organizations, other team members, where this type of change, not just AI, but any sort of change has been successful before. Having that social proof helps people understand again a concept in which this was delivered successfully, the contributors to that success, so that team members can see how they can also make it a success within their own world. Sometimes that social proof can definitely help. And it might be another team that's adopted a process or a system that then this team, you're rolling it out to a different team, and just using other team members to talk about it and what they found with it really helps, having the business talk to the business. And it stops team members from, again, just that cognitive overload. The other thing I really do want to focus in on is the use of language and ensuring that you're using the language of the business and the language that the team members would use. Because if you're talking an example and you're using the wrong language, then, or a language that the team members can't really relate to, what they're having to do is use their brain and their smarts to join the dots for themselves. So you're talking, I think you're talking customer, we call them clients. And even something as simple as that can be quite jarring. And that can actually just be an interrupt that is going to hamper their ability to connect to the story because you're not using the term that they use. And as much as possible, please do that because it will make it easier for the message to resonate and for them to connect to it. And if you're talking about a process, so you might say this is an onboarding process, but team members might see that as the first day experience, and it might be what they call it. it might be something within the organisation that has been coined over time, and everyone talks about the first 90-day experience. And you're talking about onboarding, and what they're thinking is, are we talking about the same thing? Is that the change that you're talking about? Is that what's happening here? And that is how easily you can miss the mark on your messaging. And that's how much you can actually put at risk the cognitive overload concept onto a team member simply because of the languaging or the framing, because you're not understanding their world, you haven't translated it for them. You don't want them to have to think too hard to connect those dots, because their brain will be interrupted by that. Their ability to then be able to follow your next message will be hampered. They'll hit a roadblock because they're still trying to struggle to connect the dots. And I've had this myself in a number of changes that have happened across organizations when I've been there, and someone's telling me about a process, or now we're going to put in new business case at the commencement. And I'll say, okay, well, is that during the discovery phase of a project that we're doing the business case, or is that even before that discovery phase? And if the person can't answer that or line it up to the process we have currently in play, then I'm going to struggle, because all the way through, when they say the next concept of then you have to do a program brief, and I'm thinking, okay, is that after the business case? Is it before the business case? Where does it fit in? And so just even a simple example like that, I could be caught in that whole presentation about the new ways of working, trying to figure out the connections to my ways of working, or the person who's presenting could join those dots for me. And that means that I can then think more about how I'm going to adopt the change rather than what the change is. And that is the whole concept of making sure that you are presenting your change in a way that's coherent, a way that is translated and connected to my ways of working, mine being me, my being the person who is impacted by this change. And then you will see there's just an ease for people to understand the message, understand their role in it, understand how they can contribute to it. Or I'm just constantly going to be hitting barriers, cognitive barriers of trying to understand how this works. And from a change perspective, the change leader might be frustrated that people aren't adopting the change, but the reality is you made it too hard for them to understand what it meant for them. And therefore, if pennies drop later in the process, then that is called resistance. But the reality is that the resistance hasn't been addressed up front, which is trying to make that pathway as smooth as possible through connection, through translation, and so that the receiver of the message can understand it without becoming overwhelmed. So think about that, because the concept of overwhelm can be quite prevalent for a lot of people nowadays when it comes to change, because of the environment that we're experiencing in 2026. And we've had a very rocky 6 years since 2020 and COVID days. And they're still permeating throughout now because of the economic pressures. And now we have major technology evolution happening. So more and more people are in a heightened state of stress just on the daily basis because of our financial situations, because of our work situations and work pressures, and because of volatile environment globally and politically that sits with all of us at the moment. So without making sure that your messages aren't creating even more stress, you're going to find that your change is going to hit a lot of hurdles. So what you want to do is take the time to polish the message, connect the message, simplify it as much as possible so that you can get the best outcome possible. So think about that. I hope it's given you some ways in which you might just uplift your messages a bit more. If you're finding that there's feedback on people not really understanding what the change is all about, just reread it, reread your messaging, have a look where you could potentially use a picture rather than words to help tell the story. How can you give some good examples from the impacted group's perspective so that it does resonate with them? And think about the language that you are using and making sure that, of course, the person who's receiving the message does not have to join the dots for themselves, that it's all laid out in a simple fashion for them so they can understand how it impacts them and how they can either choose to get on board or not, but that they're very clear on what the options are around the change itself. I hope this helps, and come to my virtualchangemanager.com, sign up for our newsletter. More and more we are finding that in this environment, being able to deliver change well, being able to work with others well in the change landscape, and being able to implement change with respect is more critical than ever, so that your people are considered, your purpose is considered, and that you're getting the best outcome at all times when it comes to change for you, your organisation, and your people especially. I hope you have a wonderful day, and just reach out if you have any questions about the world of change. You come to my virtualchangemanager.com and check out the courses that we've got in the back end of the year. And just remember that change matters because you, your people, you all matter.